Salsa is one of those things that you can down a literal gallon of at a restaurant, but the jarred stuff at the store, well, let's just say there's a reason you're watching this video. Be a salsa party, gonna be a salsa party. Good morning, you beautiful people. Today, you are gonna learn how to make 3 incredibly delicious and refreshing salsas. And not only am I gonna show you the secrets that restaurants use to make their salsas so addicting, but also multiple techniques that require minimal effort and result in maximum flavor, because that's good value. Now, before we get into our first recipe, there's one rule that we need to go over because it applies to all of them. Use fresh ingredients. Because salsas are relatively simple, it means that each individual piece is going to play an important part, a big part. And so the quality of those will directly impact the quality of your salsa. Just like how the quality and freshness of the oil you use will directly impact the quality and freshness of whatever you cook in it. And now back to our first salsa, Pico De Gallo. This one has the simplest process, but in my opinion has the most impact when you're eating it. So adding on something that's pretty fresh and bright is gonna help to just balance it all out. Now we're gonna start with 6 Roma tomatoes. I cut off the top and the butt, and then I'm just gonna cut a sliver down the side. Now from here, I'm gonna put my knife right inside that sliver, and I'm basically just going to roll and cut out the inside gutty parts, like this. And then from here, you might still have a little bit of those watery seeds. I'm just gonna go ahead and tap this down and scoop it away. Now the reason that I'm doing this is because we're not blending our salsa. We don't want it to be very wet. The inside of our tomato is super wet, so we just want to remove it. Now from here, you just want to take a sharp knife and we're going to slice into strips, then we'll rotate and we'll give those strips a nice dice. The size of your dice is really up to you and whatever your personal preference is, but the key is you want to make sure it's all relatively the same size, so that way it all mixes and incorporates evenly. And now from here, you're just going to repeat this process until you've done it with 6 Roma tomatoes. And now that we've cut up all 6 of our Roma tomatoes, we can go ahead and move all that to a bowl. See, I learned my lesson about not scooping directly behind the board, because then things just end up on the floor and I have to clean them up. Fool me once. Now moving on to our white onion, we're gonna go ahead and cut this in half because we only need half for this recipe, but we'll save the other one for another recipe. We're just gonna cut off the tip and then peel back all the skin. We're gonna give this a very similar treatment to the way that we did our tomato, except, well, we're not gonna core it and we're technically gonna cut it differently. It's just gonna have a similar result. So technically speaking, we're gonna do like nothing the same. It's just gonna end up being similar cuts as our tomato. Don't know why I promised you it'd be the same. Now for our onion, we're gonna go ahead and cut around the radius, but not going all the way down to the root. You wanna make sure we're leaving the root intact. Doing thin strips here. And then once you've gotten that all cut around, it should look like a nice little bloomin' onion. And then from here, we're just gonna hold it all together and we're gonna cut this into a nice fine dice, a little bit smaller than we did with our tomatoes, but if you want bigger pieces of onion, that's fine, you can go with bigger cuts. And now that these are cut up, instead of adding them directly to our bowl with our tomatoes, first, we are going to add them to a bowl of cool water. Now, the reason we're doing this is because white onions are very sharp when they're raw. If you've ever had a raw white onion, then you know that like sometimes it's a little much, it's a little aggressive. It's like a stab in the mouth. And so by putting them into cold water, it's going to take away that sharpness and leave us with just that nice, fresh, oniony flavor. Now we can just set those aside. Now moving on to our jalapenos. Now, anytime that I'm cutting up peppers, I always try to wear a glove on whatever hand's fondling it, because even if you wash your hands directly afterwards, most of the time there's still gonna be some spice on your fingertips and it will get in your eye. Or worse, you will go to the bathroom later and it will sting for way too long. So just wear a glove. Now the amount of jalapeno that you put into your salsa is totally up to you. I think somewhere between 1 to 2, depending on the size. These guys are a little bit bigger, so I'm probably just gonna do 1. But if you are totally against spicy, then that's totally fine. You can leave them out. Or you can swap it for a different type of pepper, maybe a sweet pepper, just as long as you'd enjoy it. In my case, I'm just gonna do 1 jalapeno, and I'm going to core out all these seeds and the pith. That's what it's called, the pith, the membrane, the inside white membrane. And I'm actually just gonna core these out over the trash can because I have cats. So if I try to do this on the cutting board and a rogue seed hits the floor, then they might eat it and then they might cry. And I don't want my cats to cry. And you might be thinking, well, like, Ian, why don't you just immediately vacuum afterwards? And what I would say is I do. But you clearly don't live with pets, because if you do, then you would know that at some point in time, your pet, cat, dog, lizard, whatever it is, has come up to you and you're like, what in the world? Where did you find that? They just have a way. They just have a way. Now back to our jalapeno, I'm gonna go ahead and cut these into very thin strips, much thinner than we did with our tomatoes. And then from here, I'm just gonna dice these into a nice small dice. I want this dice small because I want it to spread evenly and thoroughly throughout my Pico de Gallo, and I don't want giant chunks of jalapeno. I want like little bursts of heat. Now from here, we can just go ahead and move this into our bowl with our tomatoes, and then we'll move on to our cilantro. Now for our cilantro, you wanna make sure that you wash it. And I should be telling you to wash every single one of these things, but everything else is pretty straightforward to wash, and cilantro is one of those things where like, sometimes you just run it under the sink and like, you think it's washed, but it's a bush. So like there's stuff spread throughout it. So make sure you're getting all up in there, just washing it thoroughly with just water. It is 100% worth the extra work. Now, I've got about 1/4 of a bush of cilantro here, including the stems, because the stems have a lot of flavor. That said, if you're someone who's like, I like cilantro, but I don't like the stems, like, make it without the stems. It's fine. Cilantro is like 75 cents. But on the other hand, if you're someone who doesn't like cilantro because it tastes like soap, then I'm very sorry for you. And you can leave this out, but it'll feel like it's missing something. And I don't know what to tell you to replace it with. But for all my cilantro lovers, you're gonna go ahead and just bundle it up and give it nice thin slice one way, scoop it all together, and then give it a nice chop the other way. When thinking about how much to slice up your cilantro, just think about the other things in your Pico de Gallo. Think about the tomato, think about the onion, think about the jalapeno. It's all chopped really small. So you also want your cilantro to be fairly small. And now from here, we can go ahead and scoop it all up. Can I get it in one go? Mostly, and add it to our bowl. And now at this point, our onions have been sitting somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes. That's plenty of time. We're gonna go ahead and strain them out. Check out this bowl. See that? It had a strainer inside of it. And now into this bowl with the rest of our ingredients, we're gonna go ahead and add the zest of 1 lime. And the best way to zest any citrus is to go all the way around it. Instead of trying to just zest one spot, if you do that, you're gonna end up with the white pithy stuff, and that's the stuff that's bitter and no good. So it's best if you just start on one side, pull down, rotate, pull down, rotate, pull down, until you've gotten more or less all around. Now we'll give this lime a good roll. Enjoy the benefits of that fresh lime oil right on your skin. They smell lovely now. And then we're just gonna cut this in half, and we're going to go ahead and juice it right into our bowl. Now, depending on the juiciness of your lime, you may need 1, you may need 1.5, you may need half. It's more of a by taste thing, so definitely just taste and adjust as you need. In my case, I know these limes are not as juicy as they could be, so I'm gonna go ahead and just do the full thing, and then I'll adjust from there. Now we can give this a nice, generous pinch of salt and stir it all together. And now here's a pro tip. If you are gonna be eating any of these salsas or any salsa you ever make with chips, it's important to taste test with the chip that you're gonna be eating it with, because some chips are saltier than others. And so if you taste it with one chip that has a lot of salt, you may think, oh, it's fine. But then if you taste it with another chip that has like no salt, then it's not gonna be fine. That's really good. Very refreshing. The right amount of salt. Up next, Salsa Verde. Now, Salsa Verde can mean different things to different people, depending on the city you're from or even the family you're from. They can be very different. But at the core of all Salsa Verdes are tomatillos. These beautiful little green sticky devils. I don't know if they're technically a fruit or a vegetable, but I also don't know the same about a tomato, so that tracks. We're gonna start by carefully peeling the skin off these tomatillos and removing the little bit of the stem. Now, depending on the size of your tomatillos, you may need 6, you may need 7, you may need 8. If yours are small, get more. If they're large, then get less. But either way, once you have all those husks peeled off and you're left with just the naked fruit or vegetable, we're gonna go ahead and rinse it off. Tomatillos tend to be very sticky between the layer of skin and husk, so we wanna make sure we get rid of all that extra residue. Now moving right along, we've got that other half of our white onion. And for this, instead of cutting it into small little pieces, we're actually just going to cut off the tip and the butt, and then we're gonna go ahead and just cut this into quarters. So you end up with these pieces that are roughly the same size as your tomatillos. Next up, we have garlic. Got it. And for this, we're gonna need somewhere between 4 to 6 cloves of garlic, depending on how much you like garlic and the size of your garlic. One of the beautiful things about salsa is that really measurements are more of like a suggestion. So if you wanna add more of something or add less of something else, then do it. Try it out, see if you like it. It's really one of the perfect recipes to like freehand and riff off of. Try new things. Now for our garlic, we're gonna go ahead and just crush and remove the skin, adding it to our bowl. And now from here, the last thing we need to do is chop up some serranos. Now, I am not going to be cutting these up. I'm just gonna cut them in half once or twice. And from here, I'm just gonna add them straight in. So I'm not super worried about the spiciness on my fingertips, but I am gonna wash my hands twice. And keep in mind, if you don't wanna use serranos because they're too spicy, that's fine. Use jalapenos or use a sweet pepper, like whatever you wanna use it. In my case, when we're eating a salsa verde, I really wanted to have a little bit more of a kick, so I'm gonna be using serranos. Well, they're in there. These are just the butts. Now, we're gonna go ahead and bring a large pot of water to a boil. And once we're boiling, we can go ahead and add in a generous pinch of salt and carefully add in all of our veg. Now, there's a couple reasons that we wanna simmer these, and the first is for texture. Our onions, serranos, and particularly our tomatillos have a very very strong structure, which just means they're not exactly soft. And because we want to turn this into a smooth salsa, we want to break that down as much as we can. The second reason is for taste. By boiling our onions, we're going to mellow those out. And by boiling our tomatillos, we're going to get rid of that strong acidic and citrusy flavor in exchange for something that's a little more sweet and earthy. And you don't have to do this by boiling. You can also just cook them in a pan, throw them into the oven, into the oven. I mean, you could throw it under your oven too, but it would take a lot longer. But for today's purpose, I want it to be very clean with no char on it, so we're boiling it. Now, after you've let those boil for about 10 to 12 minutes, once those tomatillos are looking a little bit brown, we can go ahead and move all of the contents into our blender. And technically speaking, you don't have to use a blender here. You can definitely do this by hand. You could absolutely just mash it all up if you wanted to, but it's a lot more work. And I would recommend, if you have a blender, to just use a blender. Now, once you've moved everything over into your blender, don't discard your water just yet, because you may want to use some of it after we blend it up to thin it out. Now, in addition to what we've already got in there, we're also going to add in half a bush of wasp cilantro, a pinch of salt, and for the thing that's going to make you come back for more every single time, about a tablespoon of chicken bouillon powder. This is the thing that restaurants are using that makes it so addictive. It is packed with umami, and it'll make you just salivate when you taste it. Now we can just close this up, and then we'll just give it all a good blend. Also, important note here, this is hot, so two things. One, don't overfill this. And two, hold it down and blend on a pulse. Because what will happen is, if you are blending this just willy-nilly, is there's a chance that the pressure from all this hot liquid builds in here enough and the top just pops off. Why do I know, you ask? Well, now, once this is all nicely blended, we're gonna go ahead and check for consistency here. Depending on how thick or thin you want your salsa, you may wanna add in some of that veggie water. Mine, I like this thickness. This is good. I will not be adding any. Now let's go ahead and taste for salt. Oh yeah, that's perfect the way it is. Oh, that's really good. Yes. And now for our third and final salsa, the one that graces the tables of your favorite Mexican restaurant, Salsa Roja. And this one we're making in a molcajete. But also, you don't have to use a molcajete. You can just do this in a blender or by hand, however you want to. But if you wanted to, this is how you do it in the molcajete. We're gonna start by cutting the sphincter off of our Roma tomatoes, and then we're gonna give those a good cubing. Cubing? Well, quartering. And we'll do that with 6 Roma tomatoes specifically. Now, we can move over to our onion. We have 1 large red onion that we're gonna chop in half, saving this half for something completely different. I don't know how you plan to use it, but don't waste it. Then we're gonna cut off the tip, peel off the skin, and now from here, we're gonna do something a little bit different. We're gonna go ahead and cut off about 1/3 of this red onion. And from here, we're gonna go ahead and give it a nice dice, the same way we did with our Pico De Gallo. And we can set these aside separately. Now for the remaining 2/3 of our half of an onion, more complicated than it need to be, we're just gonna chop the root off and then cut that in half. Well, into 2 more thirds. Now we'll go ahead and cut the stem off of a jalapeno and place that to the side. Now we've got somewhere between 4 to 6 cloves of garlic, crushing, removing the skin, and adding with our pile over here. And then last up, we're gonna take our cilantro, about half of a bundle's worth, and we're just gonna roughly chop that similar to the way we did with our Pico de Gallo. Now, once all that is chopped up, we're gonna go ahead and move these vegetables onto a tray or some sort of vessel to move them off of your cutting board. And then we'll move these diced onions and cilantro into a separate bowl. And then we'll just set these aside for later because we won't need them till the end. Now for this part, you can do this on a skillet or you can do it in the oven. It really doesn't matter. You're just trying to get a char on those vegetables. You want them to blister and you want them to get a little black. For our case today, I'm gonna do it on the stove because it's more visual than if I just threw it in the oven and pulled it back out like 5-10 minutes later and was like, hey, look, it's charred, because, you know, it's a YouTube video. So on high heat, we're gonna go ahead and add in a generous amount of oil, make sure that's nicely coated, and then I'm gonna put all of our tomatoes in skin side down. And then once you've added all those tomatoes in and realized that you used a pan that was far too small, we're gonna go ahead and wait to do our onions, garlic, and jalapeno because there's no space. Now after about 5 minutes, that first side should have a nice sear to it, and we can go ahead and just give this a quick flip and get just a little bit of color on that underside. We don't want too much because if we do too much, it's gonna turn to mush, so we want just a little bit. And then after about another minute, we can go ahead and remove those tomatoes, add in a little bit more oil, and then we'll repeat this process with the things that we couldn't fit the first time around, like our onions, our jalapeno, and all this beautiful garlic. Now, had you been able to fit this all in the same pan, then I would have told you this, which is as it's all cooking, you wanna make sure you're paying attention to your garlic because your garlic is gonna char up first. And so this is probably gonna be on here maybe a couple of minutes versus like our onions and jalapeno will sit on here for probably like 3 to 5 minutes. Now after a few minutes, our garlic is starting to become nice and charred, and so we can go ahead and remove all of that garlic because we don't want it to burn. This is incredibly fragrant right now. It smells amazing. Our onions are looking pretty good, but they could still use a little more time. Same thing with our jalapeno. That jalapeno is a lot thicker than everything else, so that one's gonna take probably the most. You know, while we wait for these things to char up, it's a perfect time to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend. I put a lot of time and effort and hard work and a lot of hours into making these videos for you guys, into making these recipes, and I hope that you love them and I hope that you enjoy them. And if you do, the best way to support this channel is to do those things. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with one person. It's free, it's super easy, and it goes a long way. So I hope you're enjoying. All right, and now that our onions are nicely charred, and same with our jalapeno, you can go ahead and move that over as well. And now we move on to the fun part. Quick walkthrough, this is a molcajete, basically just a mortar and pestle. But instead of being made out of something that's super smooth, it's made out of volcanic rock. Volcanic. They're rough, they're imperfect, and that's what makes them perfect. Mine has been seasoned, but if you get one from the store, or you order online, or from a Mexican market, or wherever you get it from, you're gonna need to season it. For that, I have a video too, and if you need it, then I'll leave it somewhere for you to click on. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add in all of our garlic into our molcajete. Follow that up with a nice pinch of salt. And again, you don't have to use a molcajete to make this. You can do this in a bowl with a spoon or a fork. It's all fairly soft. Or you can even just do it in a blender or a food processor. Like, that'll work just fine. But if you're doing this in a molcajete, then you're gonna wanna go ahead and crush up all your garlic, grind it all out. It should become a fairly nice and consistent paste. Now, once that garlic is all mashed up, we can go ahead and add in all of those onions and that jalapeno as well. And we're basically just gonna do the same thing that we did to our garlic. Also, it's important to note that if you're not doing this in a molcajete and you're just doing this in like a blender or a food processor, then just throw everything in at once. This is just because it's really hard to do this if you stuff the life out of your molcajete. It makes it really difficult. So that's why we're doing it in steps. And then after a couple minutes and you've got all that nice and pulverized, we can go ahead and start to incorporate all of our tomatoes. Now, because there are so many tomatoes, we're gonna do this kind of batch by batch. Start with about half of them, and then we'll work those in and then do the rest of the other half. Trying to say the rest of them and the other half at the same time. Because these were charred, they should kind of just mush fairly easily, and we can keep going, adding the rest of those in. We're gonna leave behind as much of that oil as we can because we don't want it to be too oily. Ooh, and we're splashing. Now, depending on how smooth or chunky that you want your salsa to be is gonna determine how long you're kind of going at this thing. So for me, personally, I like to get this as smooth as I can. So 10 minutes later of just going to town on this thing, we're at a consistency that I'm happy with. Now we can add in the final bits of our salsa. Starting with the cilantro and onion from before. This way our cilantro doesn't turn into just nothingness, and this way we also have a little bit of texture from those not roasted onions, or also not pulverized onions. Then we're gonna go in with about 2 teaspoons of chicken bouillon powder. You can do a little more if you like. You can do none at all if you like, but you should do some. Then we'll add the juice of a lime. Ooh, that's a nice and juicy one. Switch. We'll give this a small pinch of salt because we did add some in the beginning when we were mushing up our garlic. And now we can just kind of stir all this together, doing our very darn best to not just overload the sides and make a giant mess. And now we taste for salt. A little more salt. Perfect. I mean, look at that. That's good stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I really hope that you learned something. Here's some videos I think you'd like to watch next. Don't forget about the other half of your red onion, and I'll see you next week.